Welcome everyone, Suzanne from Susie Q Crafts. Today I'm doing a tutorial for Dr. Digi of Digi's Stamps. This is one of the boards I like to use. I buy them in WH Smith's. This is the smaller one. I do most of my colouring in the evenings in front of the TV, and it's magnetic, so I attach my pictures to here. I also have a larger one which is just under an A4 I believe, but they're quite reasonable. Today I don't need that because I'm out in the log cabin doing some filming for my first Copic tutorial. The image is printed on blended cardstock, and I haven't done any winter tutorials, so I'm really sorry about the light reflection in my glass mat. I didn't think of that. I'm starting with E11, E21, E00 and E000. These are my favourite tones for colouring flesh, and I always lay down my darkest to my lightest, putting in my shadows and then going back over to darken my shadows if I feel I need to. So I'm going to go around the edge of the nose and I take tiny flicks. You can zoom in on the image. I'll open it in widescreen for a closer view. And I go from dark to light. So I go over the area I have just coloured. And it's all about Copic colouring, it's all about moving your ink around, using the next pen to move the ink, blending it together. There's a lot of pressure actually used on the Copic cardstock, and I actually flick the colour into another. So I'm flicking my dark colours into my lighter area. You will get a few moments where I speed it up for you so you don't get completely bored by my colouring, and also for zooming in as well so you can have a really good close-up view of what I'm doing. So I'm just speeding up now to colour in the hands, and I take the darkest colour around the cuffs, where the cuff's going to come, and in between the fingers where my shadows might be. I'm now moving on to the beard moustache area, which covers actually most of his face. The only flesh you can see on his face is his nose. And I'm taking C3 as my darkest, C1, C0 and C00. As you can see, I've put the colours down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen for you. Now I'm treating the beard area like I would hair. So I want gaps in between the strands, so they're not completely up against one and each other, and I flick from the top to the middle and from the bottom up to the middle. And I'm going around the moustache area as well, and his sideburns or side beard, whatever you wish. When we colour something white, it's good to use our cool grey tones or some of our really pale blue tones. I would use my blue ones for if I was colouring something like water or glass. And then if I want white like snow or hair, as in this particular project, we're using the cool tones. Keeping them really light. So our darkest being 3, which isn't actually too dark. I would use this also on a nappy or white socks, white t-shirt, something like that. So I'm going to leave it with you now so you can watch the colouring process, and I'll be back in a minute. The speeded up version, if only we could colour this fast, I'd have so many more projects already done in my stash box, which would be quite nice. So I'm filling in with my lighter colours on this beard area. and all the time I always flick from bottom up and then from top down. Dr. Digi images are great for beginners and intermediate to advanced. There's lots of detail in the images, and we can kindly thank our artists for all that. It gives us as Copic colorists a lot of help when there's detail lines in an image. I'm going to zoom in for you now so you can have a closer look of how I'm colouring this up. And I've just noticed I've got a little bit of pen damage. This pen is the C3 and it needs a new nib. It is really important to look after your Copic pens, clean your lids thoroughly every so often, and also change the nibs as well. I'm using Chow and sketch markers. I don't have a preference over them, either of the two. It's just an expense thing. The Chow markers are a lot cheaper, but there's a wider colour range in the sketch markers, so I fill in with my sketch markers. I wish I could afford the whole set of sketch markers. That would be really lovely, but unfortunately not. I'm also taking my grey markers along the edges of the book pages. So I'm just working again from the inside out and from the outside in, just to define the different leaves of the pages in the book. So this is what we have so far. We've got the flesh tones and we've got our grey. We're now going to be moving on to the green, which is going to be his shoes, his sash belt, the patch on his hat and the band on his hat as well. I've speeded this up because my technique is always the same. It's always dark to light. We're using YG67, YG63 and YG61. And YG stands for yellow-green, so these are the yellow-green shades. I have all my Copic markers stored brush nib down. And you'll see my Chow ones, I've put a tiny dot on the end so I can quickly identify. I love the way the sketch ones already have the number on the end, but the Chow ones don't. I'm sure somebody is going to ask me these questions, so I thought I'd add them in. But it's a small sticker dot and I just put the number on the end so they're easy for me to grab hold of. And I also have them in colour sections in a box, and my dad made me a lovely MDF grid to go inside to stand them all up in. I've noticed that I missed a little section of his beard, which is under the sash, so I'm just going to go back in with my grey marker. And now I'm moving on to the wizard potion book that he's carrying, which is R89, R83 and R81. And I'm going to do exactly the same. I wanted to start with a really dark pink because I wanted it to look like a really old kind of sort of medieval Victorian times. I don't know what I was going for, but I was thinking that colour, a kind of old velvety wizardy book. So that's the combination that I chose. I also promise you in my next tutorial to improve my camera angle. I haven't done many tutorials. You can find them over on my YouTube channel, which is Suzy Q Crafts. There will be a link at the end of the video. But mainly they are ink techniques and card design techniques. So the camera angle is completely different. I will try and improve my camera angle for you, maybe bringing my camera in at the side so you can actually get a close-up of the part I'm colouring at the time. I'm trying to zoom in for you as best I can when I've coloured in an area so you can see exactly what part I've gone over. So moving on to the opposite side of my book, and then I'm going to work down the spine as well, paying particular attention with my R89 into the spine and the rings around the book, leaving those lines really deep. So now I'm colouring the globe at the top of his walking stick, staff, I'm not sure. It's C3, C1 and C00. Instead of doing flicks this time, I'm just doing small blobs. I want it to remain really cloudy looking, like it's glass. So I'm not flicking there at all and I'm not really blending together. I'm just doing small little blobs overlapping and next to each other. And I'm now going to colour the cloak that he's wearing, which is E37, E35, E33 and E31. I'm also going to do his hat as well. Now this is quite a large area, so I'm going to zoom in at some points and also speed it up quite a bit for you. When I'm working on the hat, I'm going from the corners and then from the top under the band that goes around his hat, blending into the middle, so we've got some really good shading. This set of pens is really good for kind of boot brown or wood grain as well, a really good set of browns. I'm adding some crease marks in the hat with my darkest pen. I'm really going over those to really put those in so it looks like the hat is old and a bit battered. He doesn't take good care of all his belongings. Please feel free to contact me. I'm sure there'll be some details below the video in the comments. You can contact Dr. Digi and I think he will put some links in so you can buy the digital image. Later on we'll also be using some of the Digi papers as well when I layer up the card for the final project. You can see how nicely all those browns blend together. There's no definite line in between any of the different shades or colours. And I always work the same way, even though I'm colouring a really tiny area, which is down by his foot, which is the side of his cloak. I still don't lay down a couple of colours so that you get more realism into your colouring. And laying down all over the crease marks that are going to be in the bottom of his cloak. The cloak is the largest area that you're going to colour, and it's actually quite hard to blend all the colours in the middle, but it just takes a little bit more work. A little bit of pressure at the end with your lightest colour, blending over, pushing the ink, pulling the ink through. You actually use your lightest colour or the colour before to actually pull the ink into the middle so it all blends really well. And just laying down all my shading, all my creases before I start to blend those lines out. At some points you think to yourself in a large area, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to blend, the colours are too far apart, the lightest colour is way too off from the darkest shade, but it does. All you need to do is work it a bit more. You carry on pushing the colours. I turn my paper around a lot because I work from the edge to the middle. You can see now how all that has vanished and it's all blended together. So I'm moving on to my sleeves, and there's some really dark areas where you can see inside the bottom of his sleeve where his hand is, and I'm going to really darken those up, concentrating on my darkest colour in those areas. Don't add too much colour too soon because you can always go back in and add more and make it darker. So stand back, have a look, see where you are, and then continue. Now I'm adding the wood grain with E57, E53 and E51. I'm also laying in the ground area, which is W3, W0 and W00. You must lay some ground down under your images, whether it's an animal, a building, anything. Otherwise it appears that they're floating. So they need some ground to stand on. You can always use cool, warm greys. If they're standing in water, obviously you can use your blues, your lighter blues really well. But I use a lot of the W's. I think they give really good grounding under images. And I just don't do the flicking. I do similar to how I did earlier with the globe. I do little tiny circles and then just go over them starting with my W3 up close to the feet along his cloak and at the sides to give our shadow area, and then the W0 and the W00. There's not flicking and blending as such. It gives sort of a stony look to the image, so if it's standing on gravel or stones or something like that. W00 is great for blending things out, so if you've got some browns in there as well that he's standing on, you can blend them out and make them sort of mottled with your W00s. We're coming to the end of the tutorial of the Copic colouring part. I'm going to move on. I'm using some of the spell papers by Dr. Digi, and I'm going to layer those up also with a few of my own cutting dies as well that I've cut on the silhouette. Please feel free to leave any comments. We'd love to hear your feedback, and any suggestions for better camera angles for Copic colouring would be great. Thank you for watching this part. See you in part 2. So moving on, this is an 8x8 card. I'm going to make up my greetings card now. It's quite a heavy, smooth cardstock. And I've de-stressed all the edges of my papers. I've got a craft card in the background, then a piece of red card, and the printed out Dr. Digi papers. I print all my papers 8x8, and then I cut them up accordingly to which card size I'm using. Normally using an 8x8, 5x7 or a 7x7. All the edges are de-stressed with this little needle thread cutter, and I'll show you how I do that now. So I've downloaded this image off the internet, and I'm just going to go around and de-stress all the edges. So it just roughs up all the edges on my piece of paper, which I'm going to later put onto my card. If you go into Google, you can find some great images connected with your project. I just put in wizard potion labels, and this is what I got. So I'm going around each of them, roughing up. If you keep to one side, there's tiny little blades all the way around, and it was used for cutting the threads off of sewing machines, I believe. When people had done their sewing, it just snipped away the thread edge instead of scissors. So I'm going around all the corners, edges, just making it look a little bit old, tattered. Our wizard is getting on a bit. So I'm going over the corners. It doesn't matter if my pages, my little tag here creases, and the crease the better. You can actually de-stress these by using a Zutta de-stressing machine as well, which is an electronic machine. It does it a lot quicker than I'm doing here. But these are the ones that I did earlier. These are some more potion labels that I downloaded off the internet and just printed out on a scrap piece of paper. And I've de-stressed all those edges as well. This is the green Dr. Digi paper. So I've got a red one. I think there's 4 in the actual set. I think there's a purple and a brown as well. De-stressing in this way, it does actually cause quite a mess. And the Zutta machine actually causes more of a mess. I've gone around the edge of my image with an antique linen Distress Oxide ink with my dust brush from Inkalicious, just to so that image isn't quite as white. It's quite a white. So I just went around the edges, and I'm taking an At You glitter gold pen, and I'm just going to do the hinges on his wizard spell book. I'm just colouring in those quickly. Now I'm going to take my Wink of Stella glitter pen. This is a clear pen. They do a whole range of different colours, but this is the clear one, and it just gives a little glittery shine. And I'm going to put that on his globe on the top of his staff. I hope I got the names right. I don't think you can see it on here, but it gives a little glitter effect. It's quite nice on fairy wings, things like that as well, wands. I use my clear one a lot. So I'm going to start layering up my card. As you can see, I've already stuck these pieces on, and now I'm going to line up where I want my wizard to go, and I'm going to start to assemble all my other bits and pieces. First off is my little distressed cardstock piece that I made up earlier. It's just randomly cut, and then I'm going to lay it underneath him. So with my Collel clear glue, I do small L shapes in the corners. Doesn't need to be all over, it's just enough to hold it. And then I'm going to place that down. It dries really quickly. The thing with this glue is you do have room for manoeuvre. If you do stick it in the wrong place, unlike double-sided tape or tape runners, you do have a moment if you want to reposition it. So I'm going to hold my wizard up against that, and I'm really happy with that, and I'm going to see where I want my next piece. Our little tattered certificate or spell label. And the same again, small L's in the corners, our crinkled up wizardy piece. And I'm going to position that under where my wizard is going to go. I don't necessarily have a layout plan for all my cards. I do use sketches from Pinterest occasionally when I get a bit stuck of where I want things, or if I keep making the same card position over and over. But this is the best way to do it. If you take your image and then you just lay your things underneath it, see where you want them to be before you place your final image or greeting on. So it's just going to tuck out, coming out the edge there so we can just about see it. I think this one is frog's blood. Nice. So these are the other ones that came in the set. They're downloaded off of the internet and just printed out. I'm just going to take one more and de-stress that up. And this is literally how quick it is to do it. You can get the needle threaders in most shops, I believe Hobbycraft, John Lewis, places like that, any sewing shops, sewing machine shops as well. Or the Zutter distressing machine. It does have an American plug on it, so you need to get an adapter if you do buy one of those, but there's lots around. So I'm going to place him back down, see where I want this one. And I think I'm going to put a greeting finally in the top right, so I'm going to have this one just over to the left. It was a bit better lighting today, so I didn't have to turn the lights on in the lab cabin, so no light reflection on the glass mat today, which is really good. Now I'm going to take my 3D silicone gel. I like to keep it in the syringe. You don't have to, you can take it out of the tube, the main tube with the cocktail stick, something like that. And what we're doing is we're giving the picture a bit of height, sticking it down, but we don't press it down. So we put pea-size amounts onto every area where we need support in our picture. And this is quite a large image, so quite a bit on there. If you squeeze your silicone gel out just slightly before you put your tip on, it doesn't clog. It will eventually if you don't use it and you've got it stored in for a long time, but I do use mine daily. So I'm just placing my image. We can wiggle that around, getting it straight, getting it to where we want, and our finished card. At the end of the video tutorial, there's also another image which was painted with Distress Oxide inks, so you can have a look at that one as well. It's got a completely different look about it. But there he is, our little Spells for Beginners wizard. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. You can follow me on Facebook, my CTQ Crafts page, on Instagram, and I have other tutorials on YouTube. Please feel free to ask me any questions, I will try and answer them, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel.